Did you guys see how that last one ended? Um, Spirits affect electronics all the time. And that's exactly what happened when I was, well, you'll see it. Um, the computer just went black and it just froze. Um, well, everything froze, but it kept recording for a little while. So I'm going to finish the story now. So, one of the things was I had to burn this painting. And the woman said that Kumu had to, she was attached to me. She was involved in this. And so she had to help me burn the painting. And then the two of us had to take the ashes up and bury them up on Wa'ahila. And so Kuma came over one morning and she got there. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning. And I got a wheelbarrow and we went out in the backyard and I put a bunch of newspaper, put all this newspaper underneath the canvas. Now, the thing about the canvas was it was still damp because it was oil paint, and oil paint is super flammable. So I assumed it would burn right away, but it wouldn't light. It wouldn't light, and we lit the newspaper underneath, and all the newspaper burned away, but the painting didn't burn. And so then we put a bunch of little sticks and a bunch of dry stuff, and we even used charcoal, and that all burned, and it wouldn't burn the painting. And what was happening was all of the smoke was blowing over to my neighbor's yard, and my neighbor came out and yelled at me. And I told him, I said, he was a really disagreeable man. He yelled at everybody, but he was yelling at me about this smoke. And I told him, I said, I'm really sorry, but I'm not going to stop. And so he got mad. He walked back. And all I knew was, I've got to burn this painting, and it's not catching fire. So I went and I got lighter fluid, and I covered the whole thing in lighter fluid and lit it again, and all the other stuff, because I had put more paper, I had put all this stuff in there, and everything was covered in lighter fluid, and everything burned except for the painting. And we were out there. She came over at 8 o'clock, and it was almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon before we finally got the painting to burn. And it wasn't until we put gas, we put actually gasoline on it. And even that, it just, it took so long for this thing to just catch fire. And there was no kind of accelerant that was attaching itself to this canvas and so that it would burn. In the meantime, my next door neighbor called the police, and obviously the cop knew. He probably checked, who lived at this house, and he came into the backyard, and he said, "Mrs. Thompson," and I said, "Yeah," and he looked in the wheelbarrow, and he looked at me, and he looked at Kumu, and he said, "Your neighbor is complaining," and I said, "I know." And he said, "The smoke is going over into his house." And I said, "I know." I know, but I'm not stopping. And he looked into the wheelbarrow and he said, "What are you doing?" And I told him, I said, "I'm burning a painting." And he kind of just looked at me and Kumu. And I said, "Look," I said, "I'm being attacked. And he was a local, he was a Hawaiian man. And I said, "I'm being attacked." And I said, "One of the things I have to do is I have to burn this painting, and then I have to take it up to Wa'ahila Ridge and I have to bury it." And so when I told him that, he just sort of backed up and he was just real quiet for a little while. And he said, "Okay." He said, how did he word it? Get it done or finish it. And I told him, we've done everything we could. We can't get this thing to catch on fire and to light. And he said, well, what can you use, like lighter fluid or something like that? And I said, we've used lighter fluid. We've used charcoal. We've used newspaper. We used an entire box of those big matches. We've used everything and it won't burn. And so he just kept looking in there and looking at the painting. And he said, okay. He said, you can't keep doing this. You've got to burn this thing and get on with it and get it out of here, because he's really upset. And I said, I know. And so not too long after that, we actually, I don't even remember how we got the thing to burn. I know we just doused the shit out of it with gas, and it did the kind of thing. And then finally the painting started to burn, and we had to keep pouring stuff on it to keep the fire going so that it would burn completely. And we had to do this over and over and light it over and over because it didn't burn the whole thing. It would only burn parts of it. Finally, when the whole thing had burned down, there was this black figure of probably about 4 feet tall. And it was just this column, this black column that just hung right above the wheelbarrow where the painting was, right above the ashes. And it just stayed there. And Kuma and I just backed up because I don't know what it was. And we just looked at each other, and it was like, what is that? What is that? And it wouldn't go away. And we waited for this thing to go away for a long time. And so while it was hanging there, we were squirting this lighter fluid on it and throwing matches still into it to get rid of whatever this thing was, this black thing. Finally it went. But it hung there for, I don't even know how long. It just hung there. And so then we got all the ashes, drove over to Wa'ahila, started hiking up the ridge. And when we got up to the ridge, it was super hot. It was like midday by this point, and there was no wind. And now I'm afraid of heights. I do not like heights. And Kunu was afraid of heights too. And so, we'd be walking and she'd say, looking down, because you've got this really narrow, and it drops off, right? And she'd say, do you know where we're going? Do you know how far we have to go? No, I don't know. And every now and then I'd stop, and it was just like, okay, I need a sign. I don't know where to go. And then you'd see one leaf up ahead, one leaf, and it would be waving like that. So, okay, so I would follow it. And we had to climb down. We climbed down through this area with all these roots, and then we had to climb up another area that was so steep that somebody had put a big, thick rope so that you could pull yourself up. And the whole way, when I had to stop, because I just didn't know, I wanted to be in the location, but it didn't feel right. It didn't feel right at all. And so I would stop, and I'd see another leaf up above, up in front, and it would wave. So I'd follow the leaf. And there was probably 3 or 4 that I followed. Finally, we got up to this area, and we were way up. We had been hiking for a really long time. And there was a tree up. You had to climb up, and then there was a tree up there. And this tree was not like the kind of trees that were around. The trees that were around up there was like the halekoa, and there was keawe and stuff like that. It wasn't like that tree. And so I got up there, and there were all these big roots that were coming out from underneath, from the tree, from the trunk, And right next to the tree in the shade was an asparagus fern. An asparagus fern is like a houseplant. It's this real delicate, you don't see them, but they were my mother's favorite plant, house plant. And she had them in the house all the time. And here's this asparagus plant that doesn't belong up there underneath a tree that doesn't belong up there in the shade. And it was tucked up in these roots. And I said, this is it. This is it. Kumu, this is it. This is where it has to be. And so I buried it there. And then we left. And when we were going back down, there were a couple of times that we were actually on our hands and knees because it was so narrow. And, it was crumbling down the sides as we walked. So we were literally crawling on some of these areas to come back. And I saw a butterfly. And this butterfly flew right in front of my face. And I said, Kumu, we did it in the right place. I said, we did it in the right place because a butterfly just passed in front of my face. A butterfly is always my mom. The asparagus fern is my mom's favorite, was my mom's favorite plant, and the Tahitian side is my mom's side of the family. I said, we did it. It's in the right place. And just then, a dragonfly flies in front of Kumu's face. And she said, oh, a dragonfly is always my mom. She said, we did it in the right place. And so we finished. And then I saw this woman one more time. And I told her I'd done everything that she wanted me to do. And but I told her, I said, I'm not dreaming this anymore. But when I'm in the shower, around the water, I feel this ancestor. And she said, you have to send this thing away. You can't ever let it anywhere. You have to just keep pushing it away. And she gave me a couple of things. She gave me something from the Dalai Lama. And she gave me a pendant that was a mirror. And she told me, she said, you have to actively work on keeping this thing away. Because if you don't, it's going to pass down to your children and your grandchildren. So I can thankfully say it's gone. It was bad. I can't let something like that pass to my kids. So that's the story. And hey, Paula, if you wanted to know about that painting, I told you one day I'd tell you the story. So that's the story. Thanks for watching, everybody. Aloha.